I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My normal thing I say every meeting, on your cell phone, please either mute it or turn it off. Thank you. Approval of treasurer warrants for April 26th and May 3rd. I'll make a motion to approve the payroll warrants for April 26th and May 3rd of 2019.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Accounts payable warrants for April 30th and May 7th of 2019.
Second.
You want to make a motion first?
Oh, what? I thought you were making the motion.
That was a motion.
Okay, there's a motion. You're going to second Catherine.
Yes.
All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of the minutes for April 23rd, 2019.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd, 2019.
I will second it. Ben?
Well, move that we amend that one. We go to section 10, new business.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth line down, it reads, the school budget approved by the select board on May 14th will be voted on by the voters at the annual town meeting. I would like to see that entire sentence just struck.
Yes, because we do not approve the school budget.
We don't approve it, and there's no way of telling what we do on the 14th. I mean, it just,
That should be removed.
that and the second, under where the motion itself is, it says Ben Rhines Jr. moved to schedule a school budget validation referendum. I would like to strike the word referendum and replace it with town meeting. Because it is not a referendum, it's a town
It's
meeting.
not a referendum vote, it's a town meeting vote. Yes, town meeting.
And the sentence to be struck is the one just before that, the school budget
Yes.
approved by the select board.
Or you could just put the school budget meeting.
No, it's a town meeting, I mean, that's.
So we're going to remove the statement, the school budget approved by the select board on May 14th will be voted on by the voters at the annual town meeting. That's to be removed.
Okay. And then referendum is changed to town meeting in the
Yes.
motion. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion as amended.
Second. Wait a minute, I need that. I can't second my own motion.
No,
I'll second it. Would be you seconded? I can't remember.
I made it, you seconded
There you go.
it. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, committee appointments. Leslie Roberts, Historic Preservation Commission.
Move the appointment as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? I'm sorry.
Are there other vacancies on that committee?
I believe so. Susan, are there other vacancies? Do you know how many?
5, I think,
Oh, gee. Okay, we have 5.
or 4.
Or not?
4.
Okay. Hopefully someone will come forward.
We're gonna vote on
Okay, all those in favor? Would you like to be chairman?
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Like we started.
Okay, we have no public hearings. The next is the public comment section. At each regular selectman meeting, there will be time devoted to any resident or taxpayer of the town of Wiscasset to address a selectman regarding any item that is not on the agenda for that meeting. Do we have any public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Cordelia Emma, Wiscasset Bay Gallery, and as you all probably noticed, there's a fair amount going on downtown, and so Anne Jeannie, who some of you may have met, who is the liaison between DOT and Pike Industries and all of us downtown, has been stopping by and talking to all of us over the past few weeks, or this past week. Anyway, Ann Scanlon yesterday spoke to Jeannie about whether they would be putting up some nice parking signs like the one they did on Railroad Avenue. And they said that basically they aren't going to put any more up. We were hoping for some at Water Street and Middle Street, just to direct people who are coming through town, oh, there's parking on these side streets. So anyway, DOT won't be putting anything up until they're done with the project. So there are no signs going up from their side. So basically, she suggested that we might think about putting together something like a sandwich sign. So I did a little research and came up with a draft. So basically what we're suggesting, and I talked to most of the merchants, or all the merchants that were available today downtown, this is kind of on the fly, and everyone is happy to, it's a good idea. It'd be a white plastic sandwich sign, and I came up with a little, very sort of professional, like the international sign for parking. And so, Jeannie talked to DOT's, he's the project manager, Dennis Emery gave his approval today. He said, if the town and merchants wish to purchase these signs and use them during the day, but remove them before work begins at night, he's fine with that. So my question to you all would be, are you okay with that? And the idea would be, so it would be this on either side of the sandwich sign. We put them out so that people could see as they're coming through town that there is parking on both those side streets. They're your basic white sandwich board. They're 36 inches by 24 inches. They're 18 pounds, but the place that I would order them from, they come with a funnel so you can add sand and add another 10 pounds so they make them a little sturdier. And the sign company is having a sale for the weekend, so they're normally $130 for a sandwich sign and $91 each. Shipping is free. And so I have two questions for you. Would you be willing to, the town be willing to throw a little bit in towards that $360 and $364? And two, are you okay with us putting those signs out along the main street?
Any questions from the board, comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
When I come down through Main Street, they have those big lighted, big signs, and a couple of times when I've gone down, it'll say shops are open, parking, turn right on this street, or are they still continuing with those?
They'll continue with that, but I think if you're, Joe Smith, who's never been to
Right,
Maine
no,
before,
I-
coming
okay.
through Water Street, Middle Street won't make any,
Yeah.
we need to have as many, because I think traditionally people who aren't familiar with Wiscasset come through and they go, oh, what a charming town, and they go, oh, look, there's a parking spot. Well, now, oh, what a charming town, we have to get them visually as quickly as we can to make that decision to turn.
No, I think you're right.
So, that's.
Yes, Catherine?
We've had those signs with the blue background, with, like she said, the international permanent parking signs, and there were some, I don't know, do we have any of those? Steve Christensen, would you know?
I don't believe we have it. Not that blue.
Okay, I just thought.
We'll talk to what color do we have?
Next question.
Is it?
The other thing that Jeannie stopped by today, and I told her she'd stop by to let me know that DOT was good with this, and we were talking about with the 3 town parking lots, the one behind, the one on Middle Street, the one down past where Haggett's was, and the one behind Trees. It'd be cool, I don't know if we have any color sign of parking, so an official parking looking sign, that once someone turned down Middle Street or Water Street, then they would visually, they would say, oh, there it is down there. I don't know, we have anything that we could recycle, or?
Yeah, we're gonna have to look. I honestly do not know.
Okay. Anyway, it'd be great, as much visual, like, hey, cues for people would be great, but anyway.
Anyone else?
I think it's a good idea.
We can try it.
I think it's a great idea. I don't know whether we have any money though to.
That's going to be the next question. Do we have any money?
Even $100 us, you know, and I could rally the troops on Main Street to, I mean, everyone read, and anyone that I talked to today, they said they would throw some money in, so.
Well, I have a question. I'm being kind-hearted tonight, I guess. Have we touched our contingency yet?
No.
Why can't we take the money out of contingency? And how much did you say you needed?
Well, the total is 364, but we could.
I told you I'm being kind-hearted tonight.
You certainly are.
I think that's a good idea.
I mean, I think under the circumstances, I think it's time for the circumstances of the town. We can chip in and help business owners downtown, and I feel that it should come out of contingency.
And the thing that's nice about these two is that they're, this piece of it is waterproof and it sticks on with Velcro, but you know, if we ever needed them for something else, we could come up with another
Right.
sign, and we can move, once the permanent signs are up, we could use them down the street as reminders or stuff. Thank you so much. You haven't all.
But we haven't voted on it yet, so don't start thanking.
Madam Chair, would you allow contributions if they came from someplace else?
I would, if they
Okay.
came from someplace else.
Sounds like a
I
fun
was
idea.
gonna offer to contribute. Okay, I was gonna do it after the meeting.
Well, how about if we do it this way? Can we make the motion to ask for donations, and whatever you do not get, we will make up the difference, the town will.
Okay.
Question,
Yes.
would these signs then belong to the town and they'd be
Yes.
perhaps stored at the town garage and they could be brought out to be
Yes,
used?
that's why I was thinking if we paid for
I
them,
think
that
we
they
should
would
just
be
pay for
ours.
them.
And if we needed them during 4th of July
Well, that's what I
or
was
whatever
saying.
have you, we would have them available to
Yeah, for
us.
other years in the future.
Because there's only 2 signs, correct?
We get
Getting four.
They're $90 each. They're usually $130. They're down to $91 each, so till through the weekend. So I could order them and then just get reimbursed, or.
Yes, Bernice.
The town should pay for them because we're sales tax exempt, you won't be.
Okay.
We can still take them.
That's fine, huh?
Well, I'm going to make a motion that the town buys the signs and for the $364.
Well, you are in a good mood, I
I know.
Can we,
I will second the motion.
All those in favor?
Thank
You
you.
get your signs.
so but logistically, how do we, like, we'll,
Well, I
Can I
think she
stop by
should be,
tomorrow?
yes.
I won't be in the morning, Ellen will be.
Okay. Or I could, when would be a good?
I'll be in Thursday
I'll come in Thursday.
in the morning.
In the morning.
That would be good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll get them ordered then.
Yeah, it takes about 4 days, so we'll have them by the middle of next week. So.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Yes, sir. Please state your name and where you're from.
Lawrence Eckert, with Fixed Marine Truck and Automotive in down here.
Yes.
You guys tabled the business license last week?
That we will not be discussing under public comment because it is on the agenda under town manager's report.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
The sloop Providence, on the north end of the wreck pier, undergoing refit. We'll have the mast stepped Tuesday, May 14th, rain or snow. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
How tall is the mast?
94 feet above the water line. Main mast and topmast. Bowsprit is another 40 feet or 50 feet, so she'll be 110 feet overall. We originally were going to use a crane on the pier, but in checking with Brock Engineering, the weight of the crane and the mast prevents that. And so we're going to put the crane in the parking lot just to the right of the concrete pier. So we will be bringing the mast and topmast down along where vehicles park, maybe Friday, and get them close where the crane will be sitting. And hopefully the footprint of the crane will be such that it does not impact the people that use the boat launch. We've worked hard to make sure that we didn't impact the fishermen, and it's gone well so far, and we'd like to continue that. Low tide will be about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so in the morning we'll be free of that kind of traffic in the afternoon. We hope we can clear out so the fishermen can use it.
Understand?
Right.
It's going to be a big day for us.
Very, very good. Thank you very much. Anyone else under public comment? Seeing none, we will go on. Department head or committee chair, town clerk Linda Perry registers hours.
Basically, this is something that's done, the briefing comes, in front of the board, and it's up to the town whether they require the 5 to 9 p.m. opening. As a practical matter, nobody ever comes in, and that's all she's requesting to do, the same thing, just normally do regular hours.
I'll move we change the required hours of operation before election day for the register to be consistent with the normal hours of operation and not require the additional hours of 5.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Waterfront committee, peer vendor permit updates. Susan?
I sent you a memo, Susan Robinson is back. I sent a memo, I think, for every packet, some information on it. Should I just go through that?
Yes, please.
The several vendors that we've approved for this year, we, have conversations with everybody about their annual fees and versus the seasonal rental spaces. And told them that the fees will most likely be increased at some point, sooner rather than later. We need to work on that in a little more detail. We've got some.
I thought to interrupt you, but I thought that was part of your presentation for tonight, to give the board some input on what you as the waterfront committee thought was a good starting point for increasing the rates down there. I thought that was, am I mistaken?
This was put on the agenda, and this was the material that came with it, so I wasn't, maybe I overlooked something, but I wasn't expecting a discussion about rates tonight.
And we're happy to work on increasing them. I recently received some information from other areas that Megan at Lincoln County put together, a little chart with information there, and
the only reason I thought that is because we are at this point, they're going to be start paying for their seasonal rental. And I thought that was what we were intended to do at this time. When do they have to have a?
Well, the difficulty was that at the usual time of year when we send out the applications, the rates had not been changed.
Right.
So we didn't want to delay, so we sent it out at the.
This will be for next year.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to be discussing next year?
The waterfront committee needs to discuss this more thoroughly, and because we'd like to make some care policy changes as well, and then just do it all at once for next season.
Yes, Bernice.
We received payment for some of these already that are listed under 10B.
I don't know, it just seems to me that we're always,
Well, we didn't.
A day late and a dollar short.
We got to allow more than just, here it is, it's May. It's a
okay.
little late in the day to
And a lot of things will happen
quick do it.
in February, so.
I just feel dismayed because I know that we had that conversation and the town manager went out and collected information, and I feel like there must have been a breakdown in communication between the town manager and the waterfront committee, because I thought that when we left the meeting where you had brought the information with everybody from Old Orchard Beach to Rockland to Booth Bay Harbor, that we then said we want input from the waterfront committee, and if nobody asked them, and I even emailed about this a week ago, asking what are we going to use the old rates, what happened to the rate discussion on Thursday when I got my packet. So I just want to express that I feel very dismayed that we're going to postpone raising these rates for another year. However, having said that, now that we have sent the applications out and people have filled them in, I don't know how we can do otherwise, but it's, somebody dropped the ball.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. Yes, Kathy?
I'll let you finish it.
No, basically, we have to send out the usual applications at the usual time. And, you know, what Kim is describing occurred all after that. And as a practical matter, once we've sent out the bills with a view to receiving the money at the usual time, it was a discussion for a later time. Sorry if there's any misunderstanding, but
I was gonna say, we're happy to work on reasonable rate increases.
yeah,
We'd just like to give it some thought.
as Kathy said, it was for next year. We can't.
When did we mail out the applications?
Oh, February.
Out in February?
Yeah.
And that's the time when
Yeah.
we need
Okay.
to think about it for next
Right.
year, whoever is on the board. Start early, they'll give us, you know.
Well, I mean, it's not a surprise because we've never made a plan this whole year. This is like the end of my first year as a selectman. And we've never made a plan, like what are we gonna do? We just kind of, what's coming at us? Who's standing at the podium? Let's vote.
Well, that's what part of being a selectman's all about.
Well, I think we need to change
I hate
that.
to say it, but that's
And
about
I
it.
really believe that we need to make a plan, and we have to make a plan for this year, so that we don't sit at budget time like, well, maybe we should mash these two jobs together without any thought. And we need to just get on top of it. Sorry to take your time, but,
Well, Kathy, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I think that regardless of any communications lapse or whatever, this needs to be, fees need to be addressed months before we, you know.
you guys talked about fees last year before I was on this board, and I was at the budget committee. Like I feel like Jim brought budget information about the pier last year. It's a problem with the way that we operate as a board. We need to make a plan. It doesn't have to be right now at this moment, but we need to actually get together and make a plan and be like, all right, from June, July, and August, we're gonna tackle this issue, in addition to all the stuff that lands on the podium.
Just a minute. Bob, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, dismayed is a good word. I probably might have thought of another word, but I certainly wasn't surprised because this has gone on year after year after year. But getting by that, the two other issues I had with this right off quick, like WACC, I wouldn't waive the rental fee. I don't know why we would waive the rental fee for anybody. They're using the space, they're there. This is a space that, we should be renting. And this coastal cones, if they want to rent that space, I don't care if they never show up. Doesn't matter to me. They're renting the space. That's what the space is there for, is to rent. And I think it's a little heavy duty to insist that somebody be open a given number of days. I mean, if somebody that's got a rental down there doesn't show up for 3 days, we're going to burn their camp. You know, we should be treating everyone the same. So I think if we're going to be business friendly, we probably should encourage them to come and rent the space, and not recommend it because they're not going to be open.
Well, I did have the same thought when I saw that on here. What is your reason why for the coastal cones?
For not recommending them?
Yes.
Because they haven't been open and we have received complaints. And part of being a vendor, in our peer policies, it says you need to be open at least, a minimum of 5 hours a day, say 5 days a week. And they have not complied. So basically they're just renting the space, but that's kind of not the point of what we're trying to do there.
It's in
Right.
section 7 of the PF.
Because if everybody just paid their rent, like I could come in and say I got a bunch of money and I was like, you know what, I'm sick of this town, I'm sick of that pier, and I wish it would fall into the river, so I'm gonna rent all the shacks and never open them, and yeah. Like somebody could do that, I don't know who would. I wish I had that kind of money. But that's why you don't want it to be a ghost town. We're obviously not making a bunch of money on these things. We're doing it so that people come and walk around our town and spend money on other stuff.
Anything else? Ben, I can see the wheels turning.
Well, yes, but I want to get through this and then I just maybe make another motion.
Continue.
Okay. So anyway, I think the other approved vendors, or recommended vendors are later, come later in the agenda. So, unless you have some questions. We did suggest that the Chamber of Commerce building contributes to the electric fee. They, and they requested to have their fee waived, and we thought that it would be reasonable that they at least paid some of the electric.
I agree with that part of it, because we did waive their fee, but I feel that if they're using electricity, they should be paying something towards that. I do agree on that. Anything else you'd like to tell us?
Well, I do have, it's a little off topic from the coastal cones thing, but we reviewed an application for peer beer, and the young man's here. It raises a lot of questions for me with the alcohol permitting or whatever. He wants to have like a little beer garden down there, whether or not that's an absolute no, or I'd like some direction, or we would like some direction, what you folks would think as we try to put all the pieces together.
I don't know what our liability would be down there. And it is town property and selling alcohol.
Probably should have a chat with the chief of police too.
Yeah, no.
He's not here tonight.
I have asked the chief for previous, like, planned events that I was thinking of trying to pull together for the other pier, like specific events around the kayakers or whatever. And he was going to look into it. I'm happy to nudge him a little.
He was what?
Going to look into the possibility of doing like a beer garden. I know it has to be fenced. He was going to look into that a little bit. But there are insurances and things like that that go with your alcohol permit, at least for us at that day.
It's a little different. I mean, it's not, this point not about serving beverages, it's pretty much serves everything else. The beer and.
Well, I don't know, Maine law has something about if you're gonna serve beer, you have to serve food or alcohol or whatever for restaurants. Now, whether this comes under that category, I have no idea. It's probably an MMA question.
What the operator, have they operated other similar?
That I don't know. Would you like to speak with them? They're here.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Hello everyone, Evan Gudkowski, Wiscasset. This is my business partner, Steve Kent, also Wiscasset. Before we start off, I'd love to say that we have a check we'd love to give you. That would get right in the way of the sign and the fees everybody's looking for. As far as the beer permit goes, we're looking to operate a beer garden under the name Peer Beers. We would have a building down there. We're looking at a metal storage container currently, classing it up and making it look real nice. The idea is to have people bring their food in from Reds and from Sprague's, give them a place where they can sit down outside, have a beer. Because right now it's just Wiscasset, Sarah's, that's the only outdoor tables currently. And I understand there's a little bit of problem with public consumption, either on the pier, people just bringing their own stuff, or up at the common as well. So we're just trying to introduce a spot where people can have a drink outside and bring something fresh. And we would be a class 4, I believe it is, liquor license, beer, malt, liquor only, beer and cider. That's kind of
hours of operation.
What's that?
What are your hours of operation?
We were planning on 11 to 11, pending all ordinances, noise ordinances, anything else.
You're going to buy your own schematic?
Yeah. Yeah. We're working on that, working with David and the waterfront committee, figuring out where we could be on the pier. We're looking for a 34 by 30 foot spot.
We've got a plan where it is fenced up. I've worked with a number of small businesses over the years, and Evan came to me with the idea, and I reviewed his plan. He's got a good idea. He's been doing his homework, and he knows about the licenses, he understands about the insurance, I've been reviewing his numbers and encouraging him to proceed and keep getting, you know, one thing after another.
And so would it be all draft beer?
We were planning on probably 4 drafts and cans and bottles. I think everything else, craft beer, a lot of craft beer.
And most of the beer gardens that we found that are like this have a fenced-in area, planters, something that can be moved, but it's definitely defined. You have an entrance where you control, look at the IDs, look at all that stuff, and it's a space that's dedicated to that. As far as you asked, have you had any experience? I don't have any other operations like this, but before I started doing work at the shipyard, I was a bartender professionally twice in Brunswick, opened the Bowden Steakhouse, ran that, so.
My experience is just in bar and security operations at Scarborough Downs, off and on for the past 4 or 5 years.
I personally would like to take the opportunity at least to be able to talk to the chief regarding it.
Yep.
And what, you know, the town's liability would be at this point. Susan, has your committee come to a conclusion regarding this one?
That's it.
Sue Robson, I'm sorry.
You stood right up, didn't you?
Like I said, we just reviewed his application, we wanted to get some more information, find out about noise ordinances and.
Yeah, I think that's what you need to do, and then our end, we will deal with the police and our end of the legality part of it.
Yep.
I don't want to stop anybody from opening up a business, I really don't, but I personally don't want to put the town in jeopardy at this point.
Yep, and we've got a letter of intent to be insured for the peer policy, which is $1 million for us, and then the town's second insured up to $400,000.
Okay. Susan, did you have something?
2 quick things, one of which is, are you going to be able to contain it there? People are not going to be able to walk out there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, you can't take your
All
garbage
alcohol
out.
within the.
How do you control it though?
We have a gate.
Yeah.
I know, but how do you?
I mean, people pass in and out.
Right, I mean, how do you control them not leaving that space and coming into the other businesses that are on the pier?
Same way, I guess, with Sarah's or any other restaurant that serves alcohol. Exactly. We don't intend to.
We can't allow that.
Outside in
Yep.
a fenced area
Yep.
on the pier.
The other question I have is, there was mention of a metal storage building.
Yep.
I realize that it's probably going to be a temporary structure, so that I probably can't do anything about it. But I would hate something like that as the entrance, one of the entrances to our historic village district. Just saying.
Can we show you some diagrams or sketches?
You can show me some photographs.
Sure.
Whatever, I just would like it to be,
You got a transportation theme, and shipping was part of this town.
Well, it's the railroad.
And, but either way, we can show you what we want.
Are you talking a shipping container?
Correct.
Okay, that's,
Okay,
so to clarify.
I think what we need to do at this point is, let you go do your homework, come back with another presentation for the board.
Sure.
We will do our homework and make a decision at another time. The next meeting, May 21st, would you be able to have that available?
Absolutely.
Okay, and that will give us our opportunity to do what we have to do on our end, and we will answer as it has come in at that point.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, did you get their names?
Yeah, so. Evan Kelsey and Stephen McCann.
Okay.
I can give you a copy of our application if you'd like us to hold on to it.
You hold on to it
Okay.
and
Sure.
bring it back as a complete package.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yes, Jim?
I'm a little disappointed that nothing's been done about fees on this. I spent a lot of time beginning in wintertime. And this was discussed as early as February with proposed rate structures. I was asked to speak to the Waterfront Committee. I spoke with them again, went over the materials in the beginning of April. And I just feel that the town is subsidizing all of the vendors at this point. The fees are so absurdly low, and if they can't be changed this year, I mean, the electricity is not being fully taken into account. It's not metered. If we had a new operation that is running literally 12 on, and there's no metered electricity on that pier, that's an incredible consumption of electricity for that operation alone. Further, the town is paying, and I don't know what the plan is for this year, but if there's no increase in the vendors' fees this year, I strongly submit that maybe what should be considered is removing the porta-johns from the pier out of the budget. That's $4,000 nearly for the porta-johns on the pier, yet we have public restrooms that are costing us $12,000 a year just right down the street. And so if there's no rate increase, if we had that modest rate increase that I proposed back in February, that still wouldn't have covered the full cost of the porta-johns, but at least it would have partly compensated for part of that cost. And with regard to the chamber is not all of the businesses in this town. There are probably 5 or 6 downtown businesses represented in the chamber. There are over 30 downtown businesses. So I submit that if the chamber's fees are waived and all they're doing is contributing a modest sum towards the electricity, that all Wiscasset businesses, or at least all Wiscasset businesses that pay taxes for their properties, should be allowed to put materials out at that kiosk as well. Because currently, only materials from chamber members are allowed in that kiosk. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan, do you want to finish your presentation?
Yeah, I noticed, we had another applicant come, and we approved them, it's called Lobster Hollow. Did you get that in your packet? Okay, so I didn't see it in the motion, it's on the second.
I was just gonna ask that.
You got it? Okay. That was one question, and, oh yeah, I just wanted to say that when the applications went out in February, they were accurate with the seasonal spots and the annual spots, and we've gone back and forth about just having one fee and a few, like that, because we didn't want to have to review people twice a year for when they get off in the fall, so we went to the winter storage and made an annual fee. But then it seemed, and I talked with like Kathy and like that, if you have, say, accessory furniture or whatnot, and you're only going to use it seasonally, then it makes sense to just have a seasonal line on the application, which is why that's still there and raising some questions. So.
I have a question, and I think Frank can answer this. What are the hours of most of the vendors down on the pier? What are their hours?
What are our hours?
Yeah.
Well, we're open 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we open technically at 11, but usually 10:30, and then we run till the end of dark.
Do you run till 11 o'clock at night?
No. Well, we don't, but.
Are any other vendors on the pier that run till 11 o'clock at night?
There's no one that runs like, no. I mean, virtually there's no one there that runs 7 days a week, start with, and there is one thing about that pier, is the mosquitoes are so horrendous at times, you just can't, you couldn't do it. You couldn't run a business there. Couldn't do it. But we're open 7 days a week.
Okay.
And into the darkness, it doesn't seem to make sense for us. But maybe we should stay later.
Maybe you should.
If I was younger.
Thank you. Anything else from the board?
Only that the beer pier, at some point we have to have a public hearing on the liquor license.
Right, well, that's why I want to know what we have to do to help these gentlemen do what they want to do. Is there anything else from the board regarding this?
Yes, could we, order, take up new business, part B, so we can do the beer vendors while everyone's right here?
Of the vendor permit application?
Yeah, then those people could leave at the meeting.
It just seems to make sense to do it all.
I have no problem. Can I have that as a motion?
Before I make the motion, the Lobsterholic isn't on here. Do we have to do that separately, or can we have that?
I don't know when Kathy got the information, so usually what she's got in front of her when she puts the package together is what you see.
So the only one we could really,
I don't know. Did you?
If we have to wait 2 weeks,
I
that's
gave it
fine,
to her
I'm
all at
just
the
asking.
same time.
But Bert?
I did give it to her all at the same time.
You did? Oh.
They were at
And
our
we got
last
the
meeting.
business permits and all that.
They were at our last meeting.
They were all
Yeah, all at the same time.
pardon?
I'm right here, in Lobsterholic, you know.
Oh,
Right here,
okay.
I filled everything out, me,
Okay.
take it out.
If they all arrive at the same time, I don't have a problem.
And then, under new business B, I would move the beer vendor permits as presented, and I would add Lobsterholic to the.
I'll second it.
Okay. Yes, Bob?
Are we just gonna write off this coastal cones?
Yes, Bernice.
She's already paid, so I guess my question is, why do we accept payments before the applications
It
have been
just seems to
approved?
be incredibly business unfriendly to just say, we don't want you anymore. I just don't understand why we do that.
Yes, Susan?
They have been down there for a couple of years. The first year, the previous owners got a discount got their rate reduced to be down there because they were down there and struggling, and they still weren't open. Then last year, they were, I don't know.
They weren't open.
They were not open a lot. I guess it depends on what you want to do on.
We either have to change the policy or else they see you later, because they're not going by a fair policy, section 7. And we shouldn't accept payments until it's approved by the selectmen. I don't understand why that's been happening.
Well, then we'd be able to work on the fees.
Well, yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to exclude them. I will amend my motion to include coastal cones. If they're willing to pay $800, and
They already have.
but that's a different point. We shouldn't be accepting money for things that haven't been approved either.
Right.
But that's a separate issue. I can see you selling ice cream. I mean, you're not gonna sell ice cream on a day like this. There's no reason to open up.
I mean, I honestly can't believe that they would pay the money just to take up the spot. It's not like a clam license.
Well, no, I think.
Plus a double time.
Okay, what was your motion again, Ben?
To approve the 5 that are listed on the agenda and add to it Lobsterholics and Coastal Cones.
Okay, I'll need a second.
I have a question. Are you adding coastal cones as an approved vendor?
Yes,
For us to approve, yes.
yes.
Even though we have recommended against it because they have not followed the policy.
Right.
And the policy is enforced by the town manager to make sure that those businesses comply with the policies of the waterfront. And the waterfront policy says you shall be open 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, because that makes it an active business. The idea is not to just rent a space and walk away. So we would have to entertain changing that policy if that's the case. We don't just do this stuff randomly. We have all these procedures and policies that we have to go by. And so that's where we end up. And all you see from us is the condensed version. just a simple recommendation. Whereas if you take the bathroom situation, the length of pipe, the size of pipe, the pressure rating of the pipe, who was gonna put it in, the total cost. I mean, we went to such detail that you cannot believe it. And we ended up with a simple recommendation that you see. So, and I'm sorry about the drop in the ball thing, because we have been investigating precisely what the town manager requested of us on fee increases. But are we the same town as Rockland? Is the MDOT project going to affect the businesses in a negative manner so that it wouldn't be wise to increase the fees?
At
And
this
if history
point,
serves me correctly, before I was on the committee recommended an increase in fees, and the selectmen voted against it. So, but that's where we are, and we can only recommend, we don't have any authority to enforce.
Ken?
Regarding coastal cones, I realize that you recommend that they not be given a permit, or we don't know whether or not they will be open this time around. I don't know, I'm just trying to.
We didn't recommend them, but we felt that they, if they wanted to, could appeal to you. And in that regard, you could decide what you wanted to do with it. But they haven't even come to appeal to you, that we have recommended that they not continue their business.
Well, I kind of agree with Bob. I think, if they're willing to pay $800 for this space, I'd like to at least see if maybe they're gonna be open this year a few hours a day. I don't know, I just,
Yes, Kim?
I don't think that we should just discount the recommendations of the waterfront committee that I believe do put in many hours of work and research and meetings to come up with these decisions. I personally have been disappointed going down there to get ice cream on that pier and the place is not open. Like, they're hardly ever open. It would be better for our town if we had a business that was open and you could spend a little time there. Maybe take your kayak off the rack and go out. I was really upset when we voted to not fund the bathrooms, that we asked them to research, we gave them permission to do that work, they did all of that work, and we were just like, nope, we're not gonna do that. This town benefits so much from all of our volunteer committees, and for us to sit here and just sort of say, no, I don't think that's a good idea, without having attended all of those meetings and heard all of the discussion that went behind it, I don't think it's right. So I would ask that we amend the motion to have the vote on the cone place separate, because I would like to support the other ones, but I will not vote for the cone place. Out of deference to our committee, these guys do really good work, and I'm grateful to them.
Thank you. Yes, John?
may I ask Bernice a question?
Yes.
Did I understand correctly that Coastal Cones filled out the application form and sent a check?
Correct, on 4/26, we received their payment for $900, $800 for the application,
So,
$600 for electricity.
Basically, when the town gets the application from a vendor that had been in place in the previous year and doesn't know otherwise, I mean, it's a timing thing. It makes it difficult, to deal with a situation like those people obviously intending to come. I'm not casting aspersions on the committee work, but it's just as a practical matter, kind of awkward to deal with.
Yeah, all the vendors were invited in the February meeting to get ready for the upcoming year, and they never showed up.
And I just want to clarify, when I said that someone dropped the ball, it wasn't the waterfront committee. It was on our side, for sure.
Okay, Ben, you have a motion right now. Do you want to amend it?
No, I do not.
Okay. What is the motion?
To approve the 5 listed, plus lobster haul and coastal cheese, or coastal cones.
To include coastal cones. Okay, so it includes all of them. All those in favor?
Did you have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, did we have a second?
Yes.
It includes all of them, including coastal cones?
Yes, it will include coastal cones. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, 4-1.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would move that if we have any further applications for the waterfront we pay this year, that we add a 10% increase onto whatever it might be. Because we do have spaces that are available, people could be applying anytime, and we can put a 10% increase in now if we want, for any future applications.
Are there any spaces available? There's only one available?
1, 10, or 20.
Okay. I don't know what that means. We had main kayak turned down, double design, so there is space
That's where
available.
lobster hauling girls is gonna go, is where kayak and
Right, well, tell us down front where the kayaks go.
But the motion still stands. I mean, if there are any applications that should come forward, it'd be a 10% increase.
I'll second that.
Should we do some research?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And this is just another example of people who have done research and done legwork and brought it to us, and we listened and didn't do anything, and then more research, more discussion, they came to us, including John, we didn't do anything, and now we're just gonna pluck a number out of the sky and vote on it. It's a shoddy way to run a town.
I normally agree with you, but I do not agree with you at this, with adding the 10%. I think we cannot do that this year. We have not raised the rates on the rest of the vendors, and if there is a space available, then we should continue with our rates that we have now. Yes, we did drop the ball, I agree with Kim. We should have done this a long time ago, and it is our fault as a board. We need to get our ducks in a row. I was hoping that we were going to be able to increase them this year. We'll have to continue with. But your motion stands, we can vote on it if you would like to.
I don't see what harm it does.
I
don't either. It's up to the Board of Selectmen to set these. And this and a lot of other things.
Yes, Bernice.
Are you talking just the application fee or the application fee and the electricity?
For now, just the application.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Susan did let us know when we were putting the application for Lobster Hall at the
Would you please come up here so that we can hear you?
Susan did let us know when we did the application for Lobster Apparel that it may change throughout the year because she wasn't really sure what was going on. So just if it does change, or if you guys agree for next year, we were aware of it when she let us know. For the waterfront committee did let us know that there may be a fluctuation in changes in prices when I filled out the application. So they were making the application aware of that fees may change over time. So
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion that any new applicants would be a 10% increase on the application fee, correct? All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay. We do have one more motion, and that is to waive the peer vendor permit application fee for the Wiscasset Chamber of Commerce.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm a member, I recruited myself.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
So it's 3,
2, 1.
1. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So now, can we go back up to unfinished business, and we get that taken care of? So those are on the waterfront committee. If you'd like to leave, you can. We'll wait for a few minutes if you want to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I admire you, what you do. I know how you do it.
We admire you
I'm
for what you
impressed.
do.
We do.
Hey, everybody have a good season now.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in the desktop.
Okay, let's go under unfinished business. Removal of shed from sunken garden. And we have the letter from the appearance of the town committee regarding that they would like us to leave the shed there. John, would you like to take over?
Yeah, at the suggestion of the chair, I spoke to one of the Stortwell heirs, who was Dan, was the name?
Yes, yes.
Who said he could see no reason to not to let the shed sit there. It had been there for quite a while already, and he didn't think any of the other descendants would have any kind of difficulty. So I would recommend status quo. And if there is ever an issue, the shed is quite small. If something unexpected happened, the shed is quite small and could be corrected quite quickly. But from what I heard, it didn't appear to be any kind of a problem.
Yes, Steve?
If what I just heard is, I don't even know why we're doing this. Because I'm gonna go back to this, I'm gonna read this whole thing over again. Back in 1958, the Saltwell family offered as a gift to the town this piece of land under these following conditions. I have the deed in front of me. You guys have the deed in front of you. You voted for it, 5-0. What gets me is the deed says this. I don't think you can go and change that deed. A building is a building. Whether it's a storage shed, it's still a building. You know? So if these people are saying back in 1958, you know, and that this is the conditions of it. It's going to stay as a park. There's no buildings shall be built. Shall be built. None. So it doesn't say a hot dog stand. It didn't say an ice cream stand. It said a building. The storage shed is a building. And if that's, and to jump a little bit further to this day and age, if you're going to put a storage building on your property today, you get a building permit. So a storage building is a building. You know, the deed says this. You know, and no offense to Dan and his family, but this is what his heirs said, this is their conditions. Now, if my mother had done something, I can't really go back and say, well, this is what Mom was really thinking. You know, if that's what they said back in 1958, that's what they said. You know, we went 33 years without that building in that sunken garden. It's been 28 years since it's been there. It should have never been there 28 years ago, if you go by the conditions of the deed. So back in March 19th of this year, when I presented all of this, and Bobby said that we should honor the, let me read this, the conditions of the gift, and Catherine moved to remove it by a certain date, and you guys passed it 5-0. So the way I see it, you know, why we're back here tonight, I don't know, but that's what the deed says, and that's what I'm going on, what it says. And I don't think you can turn around, 60 years later, say, this is what they really meant. It's not what they said in 58. Thank you.
Yes, Dan, would you like to come up? Please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really appreciate the interest taken by Steve Christensen in this matter. Thank you, Steve. I've read the memo from the Waterfront Appearance Committee, and it's a very well-written memo, by the way, and I agree with it. I think we should leave the potting shed where it is. And I think a majority of my fellow descendants would feel the same way.
Thank you, Dan. Catherine?
I'm thinking that, I'm not sure of the date of the deed. I know you told me that it doesn't make any difference at this point from what I want to say. I look at this particular, I don't want to call it a problem, but issue, that the heirs are now sort of in charge of that garden. I know they have a deed from the family that gave the town the sunken garden, and I read all of the memos, and when Dan gets up and says that, he and his family members don't have a problem with that shed being there, I kind of look at them as the caretakers in the sense of, even though they really don't own it. So I think, I would vote to keep the shed where it is. I don't think it's worth all of the agony that seems to be has been created because of this. An awful lot of people have worked awfully hard for the last 30 years, keeping that pristine. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Whether that shed stays there or not is so far down on the list of things I think is important that it doesn't even show up. But I've heard a lot said here that I don't think is necessarily accurate, that any heir in the future can take that back because of that shed. With all due respect to Dan, and I actually knew his grandfather, I'm probably one of the few people here that can say that, it's not up to Dan. It may be up to his heirs 30 years from now. It rolls over and over and over. And although I couldn't care less whether that shed stays there or not, out of respect to the people who donated that to the town or offered it to the town, I don't want to try to change the wording or let anybody else change the wording now.
Kim?
I agree with Catherine on, it's not, it's just a small shed. If they had bought that shed at Sears and Roebuck and placed it there, then it wouldn't have been built there. You wouldn't have needed a building permit. I don't think. It's a tiny shed. It's like, I drove by it after the meeting. It doesn't, I agree with Catherine.
Yeah, you could
I
have it
defer to the, and I agree with Bob in that it's not that important to me. But
Ben?
It's too close to the property line, too.
Well, I don't view that we could build anything on that property. We bought in a storage shed to help the people who work on the sunken garden. Technically, if we wanted to, we could remove it every fall or after the growing season is done or whatever. And in that sense, I don't think the town violated the spirit of the agreement, just the opposite. I think the town has gone out of its way to guarantee that the sunken garden be what those people who gave it to us wanted it to be. And it's incredible the work that the people do down there. I don't think it was a shed, I think it was a toolbox. We did build on that piece of property. We could remove that tomorrow.
Yes, Steve?
You did build on that property. You built a shed. You built a shed. I'm really amazed by this. You built a shed. You built a building on there. The deed says shall have no buildings. Shall have no buildings. And now you're saying, well, that's fine. A month ago, it was 5-0 on all of it. Said, let it go. I found this information in stuff that I had because we lived in the house next door to the sunken garden when I was a kid. That's how I found the information. That's why I put this packet together, because I saw it and I thought I was doing the right thing in saying, this is what the deed says. It says you shall not do. And there's somehow, this room's gone deaf on me. You don't hear that. That's what the deed says. Can you go out and change all your deeds? Can you? No, you can't. You just can't change it because you don't like it or don't like who presented it to you. Whatever it is. It just, to me, I did a lot of work on this thing, and again, it's all for naught. I'm just saying, the deed says you shall not build. You shall not. And you guys are saying, it's fine, let it be built. So, I'm steaming right now, I can tell you that. However, I'm going to stop before I shoot myself in the foot. But I just don't agree. I'm very disappointed, to say the least.
Thank you, Steve. As it stands right now, we made a motion that the building must be removed by Memorial Day. That is the motion that we voted on. It is now the decision of the board. Do you want to stand by that, or do you want to make another motion?
I would like to see something down there that would help those who want to volunteer. If there's another way to go that will satisfy the deed, I'm fine with doing that. It seems to me that we should be able to come up with something that will help the workers down there through the summertime.
But at one point, was something mentioned that they had their tools at another spot?
It used to be across the street in Mr. Weeks or Mr. Sortwell's garage, barn on Federal Street. They used to keep them in there. And for how long, I don't know. I know that they did.
Okay, Chick, do you have any pictures of that piece of property from 1958 as it was then?
You know, not to be wise, but only my memory, Benny. I don't, I mean, even though I live next door to it.
Oh, I was around too, and I don't remember.
No,
That's why I
you know,
asked.
I got pictures of the house down there, you know, as a kid, but I don't have any from that angle, you know, looking, you know, across from the house towards, you know, Route 1. So, no, I don't.
Kim?
So if it was a temporary shed that was removable, would that be okay? Or if it was one of those, would people be happier with those large Rubbermaid boxes you could buy up at Lowe's? I mean, probably not. I'm thinking people are gonna be happier with a wooden shed, but, you know, if it has to be temporary to satisfy that deed, then.
What if it was only there during the growing season?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I'm just going by what the deed says. It said there shall be no buildings. You know,
Because it's not really a building if it's not permanent, is it?
Oh, it's a building. No matter how you look at it, it's a building. And in some ways, I agree, and I did ask John to talk to Dan, but I also agree, even myself, if I'm going to make a will, I would hope that my last wishes would be kept.
That's the way I feel about it.
And not have 4 generations down from that decide something different, saying, well, maybe she really didn't mean that. Well, that's what that person meant when they made that will. I mean,
So
that was their last will and testament, or when they gave that property. And
So if we take away the shed, then will we replace it with something temporary that the gardeners can put their stuff in? Like something on wheels? I don't know.
Susan?
Question. Years ago,
Yes.
the owner of the house next door, Choppy Tarhouse, got into a discussion with the town about sorting out her property line. And at that time, what I don't know is which way it went. I think she gave the town a little bit of property because she wanted her line sorted. Is there enough room on that little piece of property, which is separate, Steve, from the sunken garden property? Would there be room enough to move that back? I don't know. I haven't
It's
checked
worth
the deed.
investigating. It's worth investigating.
And I have that deed from Choppy.
Okay.
I have it here. It's kind of Greekish to me when I read this thing.
Yeah, I know. The chasing deeds is not to put
So I don't know.
There's a survey in Lincoln County deeds
Yeah.
that shows the original property line that has a name to it. So if they straightened it out, then there's this little triangle in there somewhere. How large it is, I don't know.
I don't know.
But I printed it out, I mean, I saw the thing, because I was just curious, because that shed, when you drive by, it doesn't even look like it's on that property, and that's why I was curious and looked it up. But it's possible, yeah.
At this point, we have
So it might even be on this other property.
we have to decide. Memorial Day is what, in a couple of weeks?
So can we go and find out about this other piece of property? Maybe we can just push the shed over?
I don't think you can. I mean, I'm just thinking now in my head where that property is, and I've seen the pins down there, And I think that building is, I think the backside of that building is pretty darn close to the property line itself. I can't be 100% sure, but I don't think there's any extra land down there. It's either chocolate, Tarbox, that's the house that I lived in, or the sunken garden. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
No, there's another little piece that belongs to the town.
Can we find out? We have a little bit of time.
Yes, Jim?
Two comments. The shed is not a foundation structure. It is sitting on stone supports. And I've not looked at all the town ordinances, but I'm very familiar with the historic preservation ordinance. And when we had to address impermanent architecture, as it were, such as this, it isn't classified as a building. I don't know how it is throughout the rest of the town, but that is easily movable, just like somebody mentioned the porta-john. So the question in my mind, is it legally even considered a building? Would it follow under that criteria? The second question I raised on this related to deeds, when I thought the intent of the deed, I'd have to hear Steve read it again, but I thought the intent was for nobody to build a large structure on top of the foundations of the original structure, which is something that the town has honored for all this period. The foundations that compose the perimeter of the sunken garden, that is at the far periphery as a support, that temporary support structure. So is it not actually within keeping of the deed that nothing has been built on the original foundation? Or is it the land entire? That's the question.
It says, Jim, it says that, and that no buildings will be built on said premises, which is...
Premises versus property.
Which I assume premises is inclusive of the...
Premises would be the foundation structure, I believe.
Said refers back to something. So
Right.
you would have to look back to what it said is referring to.
Well, to me, premises would be the land.
Yeah.
That's how I would take it.
Yeah, I would have thought premises would have been the structure.
No,
Okay.
and it says shall be, no building shall be erected on said premises.
That's just the question I raised, because I wasn't sure how the wording was, whether it was just the foundation, nothing to be built on the original foundation, per se.
Whether we either stand by our original vote 2 weeks ago, or another motion has to be made.
I don't think the circumstances have changed, but
I personally, I agree with you, Bob. I really feel that, sorry, Dan, but, like I said, if I made out a will and I wanted something done with my property, I would expect my heirs to abide by my wishes. And I hate to see it happen this way. Maybe there's another way that we can, I don't know how else we could do it, but I agree with Bob.
Can we at least look into the other land, that triangular shaped land that Susan Blackman mentioned?
Well, you've only got 3 weeks to do it in.
Well, it wouldn't take that long to find out the size of that.
I found it in 10 minutes on the.
So we just have to measure it, see if there's enough room.
Go out there with a 100-foot tape.
you could ask the butters if they would mind having it on their property.
That's true too.
I mean, it all depends on how far you want to go. If this was mine and I was trying to get around it, I'd park an old station wagon down there and I'd put the tools in the back. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can get around it. You just decide how far you want to go.
I think it might be good to have a conversation with the code enforcement officer just to see what qualifies as a building and what doesn't.
Don't forget, this has been there for 30 years, so back then it was grandfathered for whatever, because nobody
It's
obviously looked at the
a
deed.
structure. It makes no difference whether it's made out of a straw, hay, or what it's a structure sitting there that's not supposed to be there.
In 1991, when that building was put there were, and I showed you guys a copy of the building permits from 1991. There was 32 permits put out in 1991
Oh, okay.
for storage buildings or sheds. 32. So, so back then, you still had a process for getting a permit to put up a building, which was a storage building. It didn't say how big the storage building had to be, it said storage building. And I have these right here.
Yes, Gina?
Is anyone from the garden club even complain?
Mr. Jones is part of the, what do you call it?
They said
Yes.
Appearance committee, Sunday garden volunteer. And he's sitting in the back.
Steve, does the deed say anything about maintaining the garden itself?
I don't,
I'm sure that's what they do.
it says, well, the only thing it really says, Benny, it says, and the set appearances be as they are now, and as, that was in 58, when they, drafted this.
That's kind of why I want to see pictures of it. I'm sure it's changed drastically in the past 50, 60 years.
Well, let me just, real quick, when I was a kid living there was no trees on that whole thing. That was all clear from the house that I lived in, all the way to Newman. It was clear. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, there was maybe some shrubs. But and the reason I know so well, that was my playground. That's where I played as a kid, me and my brother. I mean, but I don't have any pictures now.
Well, I think maybe we should take a few days and maybe Kim Deutsch and John can work together, and Susan on that piece of property and see if it is true that maybe we can move it off onto something else and without, and also abide by the deed and bring it back on the 22nd.
And to save anybody any legwork, I have the deed of Choppy Tar Box, which was where that board is right now, and I have the deed of the one right next door to it too. It was the Night House. And I have that, a deed from there as well.
Okay. Yes, Bob?
If that doesn't pan out, could somebody possibly contact the abutters and see if it might be possible to just nudge the shed onto their property?
I think that's worth.
Yes, I think that's worth also looking at. Yes.
I've
Jim?
already contacted one of the abutters to see if it would work, Peter Eaton, but it just really wouldn't. It's right there at the tree line already, and then it gets into his driveway area. The suggestion he made was to actually put it on wheels on a small fishing boat trailer, and it doesn't qualify as a structure anymore. It's totally mobile. So, but the Lighthouse people aren't back in town yet, so I just wanted to see if they would be willing.
So we can do that? Okay, so that will be back on the 22nd again. Next item, Clean Up Grant Qualified Environmental Professional Interviews Selection Committee.
Okay, that's the Mason Station, ash pit cleanup, and we have it scheduled for, let's see, May 15th in the afternoon. So what the suggested motion is to authorize the town manager to form a selection committee to interview the applicants. There are two for the qualified environmental professional.
I'll move that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Thank you. At this point, it looks like myself, Kathy, a representative from the EPA, a representative from the DEP, and a select man or two, those that are excited about it. May 15, 2 to 5, that will be 2 interviews each hour.
What day of the week is that? May?
Wednesday,
A Wednesday?
May 15th, yeah.
2
2 to 5.
Big package, big package.
I'll have to check my calendar. I can let you know in the morning. I don't know.
Edward? No, it wasn't, it just said select man, select.
Unless Bob or Ben want to be involved.
Judy.
They're enthusiastic, it's overwhelming.
Judy and Kathy. Let me check my,
I could do it, there's nothing written down yet.
I'd have to check my calendar. Okay, is that all on that one?
That's all.
Okay, quick claim dates. Judith Dow and James Abbott, map R04, lot 002-019. Keith Hawley, map R04, lot 010-A25. Kevin James, map R05, lot 037-F. Anna Flood, map U09, lot 1-2. Charles and Barbara Wyman, map U01, lot 103. Deborah Schaefer, map U01, lot 57. Stephen Whitmere, map U01, lot 161. And Dion West, map U02, lot 15. And I have a motion.
Second.
So moved.
All those in favor? Okay. Town managers report.
All right, you'll have to help me on the name. We suggested a local charitable group to receive the Spirit of America Award. To get the, what do they call themselves?
Family wishes and such.
Yeah, family wishes.
Just so you know, I've spoken to Clarity and we're waiting for when the award is generally ceremony. They generally hold it at the county.
Okay.
As you know, an appointment, a vacancy as Water District Trustee has opened up. It's to fill out the term of a person who resigned because of illness, and it extends till the end of his term, which is June of next year, 2020. We actually have two people interested. Not quite sure how to resolve it. Dan Sorkel is right here, and Tim Murray have indicated interest. I don't know whether you know both these gentlemen. I don't know whether we're talking coin toss here, or you could interview them. And I think you have their applications there, I believe, gentlemen. Not that it makes a ton of difference because you know them both. They're both very well respected people in the community.
Who was the first to apply?
Good question.
I'm just thinking that might just.
I don't have any applications.
I think Kathy said she'd given you, she told me she'd given you something. Just now. I believe Mr. Sortwell applied first.
I motion we appoint Dan Sockwell to fill the unexpired term of Joyce Lane.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan, very much.
Next item, if I may. Review of wastewater fees. You all got a suggested rate fee schedule from Mr. Gate, who is right here. Would you like me to run through it with my suggestions? I didn't.
Yes, please.
We are currently charging for RV dumping $5 per drop, for want of a better term. Mr. Gates suggested $25, which doesn't seem unreasonable. $5 is almost nothing.
Right.
So that'd be my suggestion there.
Okay.
With regard to septic haulers, septic tanks from Wiscasset, only residents would be $50 for up to 1,000 gallons, and that would convert to 13 cents a gallon. And that's what I would suggest.
Okay.
And then porta potty waste from anywhere at 13 cents a gallon. That seems to be pretty standard.
So you're leaving that one at 13 cents?
It's still out of 13 cents.
So
For your porta potty.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's, I believe that's basically it, correct?
So for septage, for in-town residents, we went from $50 to 13 cents a gallon.
Well, oh, I beg your pardon, that's the not, yeah. Well, you read it to me. It's your sheet. You
Yes,
said
right now we charge $50.
$50 is the equivalent of 5 cents per gallon.
Right.
And
And
anybody
that
else,
doesn't even cover our
13,
costs.
anybody else would be 13 cents, right?
No, I'd like to change that to 13
That's,
cents.
yeah, but I'm just talking about the proposal. Anybody else outside the town would be.
We don't take from outside the town.
We don't?
No.
Go on. My.
And I think that came back from when they did, I'll have to check with Chuck, but I think that came from when they did land application. They only took septage from in town.
Okay, just in town then.
Yeah.
And so 5 cents a gallon or $50.
I'd like to change that from 50 to 13 cents a gallon.
Okay.
Scratch the $50 and altogether.
Right, because that doesn't even cover our costs.
All right.
13 cents a gallon.
And you wanted to change RV dumping to $25 per dump.
Correct.
And then you wanted to leave porta potty waste the same at 15 cents.
That's fine, I think.
Okay.
That's it.
Can I have a motion?
Move the septic dumping fees as recommended.
Second.
All those in favor?
And I think what I'd like to do is wrap that into the same when we talk the wastewater fees at the public meeting, unless we're okay with doing it based on tonight's vote. Because we still have to talk about the rate increase.
Yeah, and that's, on our agenda here is the next item, 11D. We have to have a public sewer rate hearing date no later than May 23, and our next selectmen's meeting is May 21. The way the finances are working in the wastewater treatment plant, we are looking at a significant rate increase, and we still come up short. So between now and 2 weeks out, Bernice and I, Richard, will be exploring all avenues, none of which we particularly care for, but there will be a significant increase in sewer rates. And I had hoped to be one figure, and there's a very high figure, on the scale people with numbers. There's a very high figure that would cover operational costs, and then there's a middle ground that will leave us short. And to fill the shortfall, we're going to have to be creative, and it'll take us a couple of weeks, right, Bernice, and we'll come up with something. But now, I was concerned during the budget process about how we would close the gap, and as we talked to the auditor and such like, we had very limited options, one of which is borrowing. So
The May 23rd, is that to satisfy the state?
That's to satisfy getting the water department to be able to increase the fees based on timetables to make it for their billing cycle.
Oh, okay, I mean, we're not under the gun as far as they're concerned.
As far as the state, no. It's just to make sure we get it incorporated as soon as possible.
for the next billing period,
billing.
for the next
Billing
billing period,
cycle.
that's the key.
So can we do the hearing as part of our meeting on the 21st?
I think so.
I have no problem, if that's what you want to do.
Sure.
So we will advertise it as a public hearing.
Okay.
And would we start at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Or a few minutes later?
Just put it right into the meeting.
Yeah, put it right into the meeting.
I've got 2 public hearings already written down here. What do I have?
I think we already decided.
We already have done, that's right. We already have done.
Just have 3.
So you have 3 public hearings on the 21st. Then I think we need to start our meeting a little bit earlier. Either that or make a very light agenda. You've got, on the 21st, you've got the public hearing for the town meeting warrant, and you also have the public hearing on the Chewonki campground.
why don't you keep the agenda light? Those other two shouldn't take that long.
So, or would you like to start a few minutes early, 5:30?
Would you like to start at 5:30?
Would that work for you, Ken?
Shall we do the public hearings, start the public hearings at 5:30 or start the meeting at 5:30?
Start the public hearings at 5:30, I would think.
Schedule them all together.
Yes.
We start at 5:30.
We'll start at 5:30, yes. Yeah.
We'll just change the time.
Okay. We'll send out the appropriate notifications.
Did we pass, we passed the motion for public hearings on the first two. Did we do it on the septic?
Not yet.
We haven't. Okay.
Not yet.
So, if you make a, someone make a motion, someone make a motion to hold a public hearing regarding setting public sewer rates at
The 21st at 5:30?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Next item.
Well, so for that meeting, you're going to have ideas as to where, okay, I mean, we stated this earlier, I have no problem taking whatever we need to take out of the reserve accounts to help offset the increase. I think it's well within what we can do.
Well, that would certainly ease the burden.
Your investment committee wouldn't be thrilled with that.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, this is an emergency.
Well, we haven't even heard what the rates are yet. I'm sorry. Like, I've heard people say, like, it looks bad, but we haven't heard any numbers.
Well,
And
yes,
we've
yes,
already
we have.
taken the top end of our reserves out from the recommendation, right? We've taken
I'm
20.
saying above and beyond that, we simply go in and I would think 100,000 tops would cover what we need.
Well, I am not as comfortable with all the numbers as you, so I would need some supporting information to read and sort of understand before I could make a decision.
Well,
I would like to know what the percentage rate would, what we're talking.
Yeah, I haven't heard that.
I'm sorry, I do agree with Kim. We've heard 26, we've heard 30, we've heard this, we've heard that. We haven't
Well,
got
yes,
it.
I'm just going by the numbers that we've been given.
If it is a substantial, that amount, yes, I could be almost willing to, I would, how am I gonna put it? I would like to see a rate increase in the water, but the majority of it come from investment. Because we have not had an increase.
Well, then you are on my side, but you said you're not.
We haven't had an increase in how many years? I'm not saying flatly take the whole increase and take the money out of investment. I think they need to be.
Neither am I.
They would have to have some responsibility and there'd have to be some rate increase there. But the majority of the money coming out of the investment. Because I can't, I have a hard time 30%. If it's 30%, that's a lot.
So can we're not deciding this now though, right?
No.
We're gonna have the public hearing because I don't have sewer, so I don't even know what that means. Like 30% is a meaningless number to me. I don't know what a person pays. Maybe that, like I have no idea. I need some information.
72 is the minimum from what we were looking at.
72%?
$72 per quarter is the minimum sewer bill.
Does that include the increase?
No. Is that per quarter? Is that
That's
per
current.
quarter or
Per quarter.
So, yeah.
That's just for residential,
Okay.
not commercial.
That's for 1 quarter, $72. And if you were to increase it 30%,
8640.
pardon?
8640.
86.40.
Yeah. And we haven't increased it in 7 years, so, well, let's wait and see what the hearing presents to us. And I'm sure we'll get information in our packet the week before.
Okay. All right, so May 23rd at, May 21st at 5:30. Okay.
Okay, next item is the union negotiations update. I gave the two board members, Kathy and Judy, the proposal and the current police department contract. And so we just we need to sit down and look through that and then pick the date. for the
You
first
sent an email or something today about,
That's arbitration, that's something
oh,
else.
that's something
meeting. Or
else.
something else.
That's
I'm pretty, subject to people's availability, I'm pretty free.
And I responded to both, to it already. Five days.
So
She
I
says
just,
no on the
we should
seventh.
meet, obviously, Tuesday, ideally about the preliminary meeting tomorrow, the day after. Take us less than an hour. You've got time.
I can't do anything tomorrow, but I can Thursday.
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning, what time?
You nail it?
What time
Thursday
Thursday?
the ninth.
Yeah.
What time Thursday
Thursday
morning?
time is good for you. I've got nothing written down on that space yet.
Can we do around 10 o'clock? Thursday at 10?
10 a.m. town purpose.
Okay.
Okay, you'll be
I'll
glad.
check my calendar, but I'm pretty sure I don't have anything.
So the next item is finally that obligation easement closing. You've got the document included in the package.
Yes, yes, there was.
Long Island Outfit is now done.
Very good.
And then, if you recollect, you had did a hearing, sorry, I beg your pardon, you discussed an application for a business license for fixed marine truck and auto business. You tabled it.
Yes, we did.
And, I understand the gentleman is here. If you'd like to have a statement from him, I've been talking to the attorney and scheduled an executive session for later. I think it would be appropriate to.
Yes, if you'd like to speak to us now, good time.
Okay, I'm sorry about that before.
No, that's
Anyhow,
that's fine. You didn't know the rules.
I was just curious why it was tabled and what was all going on. I know, I guess there's something going on. They wanted us to have building permits all of a sudden for what we did, which we never changed any structure inside the building. And all the debris that were there, that was all, been all cleaned up.
It was business.
Yeah, and that's,
I don't have that with me.
I've got it. I just wanted to hear him say what he wants to say.
a copy here, what we will look like this. And the other thing I really didn't understand is where the building permits and everything else interfere with me operating a business there and interferes with my business license. And the only reason I applied so late for a business license is when I started my business last 2017. I came and asked the previous codes officer what I needed, and he just said all I needed was a sign permit if I was putting a sign up. This is my first time doing it, I didn't know what I needed. So I got a sign permit, did my sign, and I thought everything was okay. I hadn't heard anything else until Bruce started coming over there questioning what we were doing.
I'm not going to get into an argument with you, but I do know that Mr. Mullins had been talking to you quite a lot. I sent you a number of letters. And I'll also point out that the ordinance requires that everybody have a business license. Now, it's supposed to be renewed annually. Like you say, you've been in operation since 2017. Yeah. And you know, I'll give you the fact that you may have been told, you're good with just a sign permit, but I would say you had more than adequate communication to point out that you needed a business license. And the ordinances are quite clear on it that you have to have one.
But I put an application in, back in January.
A couple of months ago, yeah.
Yeah.
But you've been in business for 2 years.
Yeah, but like I said, I didn't know, it actually hasn't been 2 years, it's been like a year and a half, but they started in October, November, actually 17.
You got your sign permit in December of 17.
Yeah.
But basically, there's been extensive communication to you and Mr. Benner, who owns your property, about the need for a business permit. And you didn't apply, despite all the reminders, you didn't apply until a few months ago. And that's what I have to talk to the selectmen about, what the ordinances require, what can be done at this point with the facts as they are. And bring everybody, have to treat everybody the same when it comes to operating a business in.
Oh, and I understand that, and that's, I'm trying to make it right, you know, with the arguments that were going on with Bruce and the new codes officer, I didn't, you know, it was a mess.
Yeah.
Because he was actually, I mean, I think he was pushing it a little too far, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
I really do.
Well, I think what we need to do is have our executive session and have you discuss with us what you have learned from the attorney, and then we can get back to you at this point in time.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
You want this paperwork back?
You can keep it.
All right, thank you.
Let's see what else. You'd be glad to know that TJ at the fire department has applied for a grant. I signed off on it, and we can always hope that some money comes in from that source, so I applaud the effort. Richard
Can I ask from who?
from the fire department.
Where did he get?
Oh,
Who's
what's
he
the grant?
playing?
Oh, I forget.
Because as we know, with our airport, some of these grants come with a lot of strings attached. So I'm just curious as what.
I'll double check. I saw it, he was in a hurry to get it filed. And
Yeah, I mean, if it's federal or state, we should look at that pretty
I'm
closely.
pretty sure it's state.
Probably Maine Forestry.
That's good enough. I'll find out, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Okay. Next item is a safety grant. Richard got it, it's for a manhole lifter.
It's a magnetic manhole lifter, you know, use pry bar and hurt your dad.
And it's what, $1,200, something like $1,200.
They cover like 60–70% of the cost of it.
And it's something you can share with public works. So that's a plus for us. So thank you for getting that. And the last item I have, apart from the executive session, is the issue of the kayak racks down at the bathrooms.
Yes.
You've had your site visit,
Yes, we had our site visit.
and you were all present with.
In the rain.
In the rain.
In the rain.
So.
We met, we discussed it. I'm only going to give my opinion. The other board members can voice theirs. I'm not in favor of putting anything up against that brick wall. If they want to have kayaks, as I said at the original meeting, down where we put the floats, where we take them out for the winter, I have no problem with that if the town wants to do that. I have a concern with liability of the town. What is our liability? If there's damage done to those kayaks, can they come back on the town? And I am concerned about exactly how much interest there is really in this. And it has been suggested by one of the board members maybe to put some feelers out before we even begin to even think about doing this, to find out if there is an interest. Or is it going to be just a waste of money that we're going to put down there and nobody use it? We could do a website, or I don't know how we want to do it. But at this point in time, that's my feelings, and I'm going to open it up to the rest of you to say what you took from the road trip.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea to find out how the townspeople feel about it.
I think so too.
Put on the website. Not everybody reads that.
That's true. Maybe the newspapers can put something in there.
And Facebook.
We can do it on our Facebook page, do something on Facebook to get some kind of response from the people. I mean, a lot of people will just put them on the top of their car, bring the car down to the waterfront, and they've done it for years that way. So I don't understand if there's a real need right now.
And my only other concern is if we should go forward with this, that the town build them and not have someone else do it.
Definitely. They would be owned by the town. We would, if we go forward, there would be hours, and we can decide whether you want to rent them for the season or whatever you would want to do beyond that. But I think we need to know if there's a real need, or if we're just wasting money. Yes, Bob?
I've still got the picture here that Jim Cochin shared with us when it first was mentioned, and obviously this design could be reworked, but this two-sided one has room for 6. I think it probably could be easily done with 8, and you've only got to just glance at it to realize it's not a huge expense. If the interest was there for people to put, you know, even half a dozen kayaks on it, it would be easy enough to build. I noticed looking at this, it's kind of interesting, the canoes, which would be by far the heaviest, are on top. So it would appear that it's pretty easy to toss that stuff up there. You see one person has chained their kayak, and it would seem to me that it would be easy enough to make the people responsible for their own watercraft, with the town having no liability. There'd have to be some agreement when they use it, but I just brought that up just to remind people. I think this is by far a better structure than gluing something onto the building, and then it would only be one-sided. And looking at it down there, I don't think it'd be possible to go 4 high without getting hung up on the roof. So if we have that kind of interest, I think we should pursue something like this. And I agree with Ben, it should certainly be something that the town does because there's interest in it and it's our reaction to it. Not something that we do just because one person wants to use it or have it.
Right. Yes, Kim?
Yeah, I agree, and Dan Wiscasset has a couple of racks that I believe are owned by the town down by their boat launch. And maybe we could just ask Dan Wiscasset how much they charge, how much,
Yeah,
they're
and
full.
what the policy is, that would be good.
Yeah.
Good thing. Okay. So we've discussed that, that's where that stands. Okay, other board business, anything else? Yes, Bob?
Yeah, I've got other board business. I asked to have it on the agenda because I intended to make a motion, which I'm going to do anyway, but I'm really concerned that the rec budget is over and is still going over. I asked for the figures on the 25th, and they was over budget about $34,000, and Denise just checked the figures for me tonight, and they're now over about 45. So the revenue wasn't keeping pace with the spending. And I told John I wasn't going to sign the warrant anymore because if we should know about this. I brought it up a couple months ago. And the spending hasn't been cut. So I would like to make a motion that we not authorize any overtime through the rec budget and hold all part-time employees to less than 32 hours.
Currently,
Well, that was my motion.
That was a motion?
And I'll second it.
Okay, now we can have discussion. Kim, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I disagree with us even discussing this now because at our meeting on Thursday when we signed the warrant, I heard you ask if you could have it on the agenda as I was walking out the door, and I heard Judy say that the agenda had already been printed. Well, then I emailed Judy and John, because you sounded amenable to it as I was walking out the door, and I emailed them on Sunday asking where the updated agenda was, and I didn't get a response, so I followed up today, and I was told it was not going to be on the agenda, and I feel like, I'm going to whip out my financial report right now in my email, but I didn't print it today, I didn't study it today, because I was told we weren't going to have it on the agenda, and I feel like this is kind of inappropriate.
It's not inappropriate because the agenda did not change. It is not on the agenda, but under other board business, that is issues that any selectman at that point in time can bring before the board if they have a concern, if they want to talk about something. That is what other board business is for. I asked Bob if he wanted it on the agenda for the next meeting, and he said he was bringing it up tonight under other board business. That is his right as a selectman.
Thank you, Peter.
And I went through Ellen's figures. I spoke to John today. I am concerned on two of the departments. One is EMS and the other one is the rec. I am afraid that those two departments are going to go over. And we don't want to have, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I don't want to have these boards, the departments overrunning their budget. If they have to curtail their spending, then they curtail their spending.
So I don't understand where they're over though, like I'm looking at the report and it shows the budget 815,669 and the spending is 717,560.
They do not have enough money. I looked at the numbers that they do not, in my viewpoint, they do not have enough money left in their budget to cover their payroll and their expenses for the next 2 months, because that is an April report. We have 2 more months that could push them over. Bob is looking at the revenue. If you look at the revenue, they are under on their revenue by like $120,000. There's no way they're going to make that up between now and June. Those were my concerns that I spoke to John about. And there's some other issues I have with the rec department also. And
These are all valid things, but I think that if we're going to have this type of discussion about the department, then it should be made known. This is pretty important. Lisa Thompson should be sitting here.
If I could just, I think in the 2 years I've been a selectman here, this is the second time I've asked to have something on the agenda. And I asked to have it on the agenda. John called me up and told me it wasn't going to be on there. I said, fine, I'm going to bring it up anyway, because the time is running out. By the time we have another meeting, May will be gone. And if we're going to try to get a hold of this, we need to do it now. And I don't want to walk out of here and have these accounts be over. And in all fairness to John, he wasn't here for last year when our discussion was, we can't let this happen next year. I think we all had that discussion.
Yes, we did.
And I'm annoyed that this hasn't been pointed out before. And like I said, I brought it up 2 months ago, that their revenue was so far under that there was going to be a problem. And it should have probably been addressed then, but like so many things, we didn't get to it. But if I didn't push it, it wouldn't happen until the next meeting, and maybe the meeting after that, and then the fiscal year's going to be over anyway.
Well, what I understood on the revenue is that a lot of the revenue comes in closer to summer when camp registrations come in.
Well, I don't think she's going to get $120,000 worth of camper registration between now and
No,
June.
but we don't know how much she's gonna get.
She's not going to make her number of the $450,000. There's no way she can do it. And I think that there's other issues as to reasons why the revenue is not coming in. It's not her fault. I'm not blaming anybody. It's just the demographics of the whole issue that we don't have the kids going to the rec like we used to. But at the same time, I don't want to have an overrun account, because number one, it doesn't look good for us as selectmen to say, well, they can't run the town. We can't do that. And we have to be able to say, stop your spending. And EMS is the next one I mentioned, that I feel that they're on the verge too. Not saying that they're going to, but at least tell them, hey, this is where you are financially, you've got to back off.
I'm fine with telling them, but I don't know if I agree with the motion that Bob made. I'd have to hear it again.
What was the motion that Bob made?
Overtime.
Overtime and hold the part-time people to less than 32 hours, which we should be doing anyway in every department.
Right.
And people shouldn't have to be told that, but they need to be.
Bob, if you look at the overtime in the rec department, it's now down to, the last one I looked at, I didn't look at tonight's, was down to no overtime, so.
There isn't much on this one.
Well, there was,
but
last one was not.
There was a huge amount.
Yeah, but, so that's progress, and I was talking to Lisa yesterday, and we talked about the spending, and talked about how it's shaping up, and she will be looking harder at her expenditure. Now, I totally agree with Judy. Very hard. I won't say it's in the middle of the year, but it's in a major transition period where they used to have, some time ago, I didn't see it, they used to have revenues where they were anticipated. They haven't come close for years. And I do know she's doing what she can. It's frustrating, I think, for everybody, not least the taxpayers. But there's only so much that can be done, and I'm having more conversations with her, and I'm casting around in my own mind as to what the alternatives are, what the activity levels are at different times of day, who's coming in, who's doing what, and just.
Well, thank you,
haven't
John.
got there yet.
I appreciate that you're doing something because, you know, nobody else is good.
Well, it's difficult. I mean, it's a terrific facility, and for a town this size, it's pretty darn nice. But we all know the kids aren't there, whether they be in school or whether you see them on the streets. They're just not there. Booth Bay Harbor, same thing with the demographics. Like they're adding a lacrosse team. They can't even staff the existing teams, and some philanthropist gave them $10,000 to have a lacrosse team, and I doubt they'll have 10 people in it. So it's very hard to maintain these things. Even the Ys are having, you know, the affluent ones are having struggles. They're all poaching each other's kids and students. Anyway, I'm sorry, that doesn't quite answer your question.
Okay, so we do have a motion.
Read it one more time.
Good.
The motion.
Not authorize any overtime and hold temporary part-time to 32 hours.
And it's been moved and seconded.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion? Opposed?
It worked there. I'm gonna abstain.
Okay.
And just some clarification, I said in my motion, the rec department.
Yes, rec.
That wasn't a town-wide thing.
No, rec
Just
department.
for clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, any other board business? No members? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056E.
Will there be a vote in recess?
No. No. All those in favor?